You wanted helicopters.
So you got them.
Thank you.
Okay, so we've got the three. We want to do a bit of variety. All three are different. There's you've got the iconic anything of the Vietnam War is the Huey. Couldn't have a Vietnam game without Hueys. So this can carry a lot of passengers in the back. As I mentioned before, they can spawn in the back. It's a mobile spawn point. They do have a couple of M60s on the side that players can jump on. In terms of people flying it, you only need one pilot. The co-pilot is just an AI guy who'll sit there. Basically, the way it works is if the pilot gets killed, he'll automatically and instantly respawn as that co-pilot, so long as the co-pilot hasn't been shot and killed already. So that's a good way for us to have two pilots without one person sitting there bored on the off chance that his pilot gets killed.
Are two players fighting over the controls at the same time, trying to fly?
Or that. Then we've got the Loach here, the OH-6. So it's a observation helicopter. Only needs one pilot in this one. Same deal with the AI co-pilot. It's got a seat in the back that can be used by anybody, but if a commander sits in the back, then the helicopter works as a mobile radio point, so he can call in abilities and artillery from there. He can also mark artillery points from that back seat. It's got a few extra little bits and pieces with this one. It's got a minigun for defense, but it's not a gunship. You shouldn't be using this for combat. It's very easy to get shot down if you do. And it works as a scout plane, the same as the recon plane does. If you fly over enemies, then you will automatically mark them on your teammate's map temporarily. So it's a very good way to spot people, especially for other helicopters, because it's really hard to see guys on the ground when you're flying over them at a couple of 100 kilometres an hour. And then finally, we've got our gunship, the Cobra. So this is very heavily armed, it's very fast. It's not as agile as the Loach, but its primary job is basically killing things. It's got two crew in this one. Pilot's in the rear seat. He's got a couple of rocket pods on the side, and he also has a 20mm cannon. He's very, very powerful, but his gunner in the front has the nose turret. It's got a 40mm automatic grenade launcher, and it fires fast, and it's got a minigun for everything else. So this thing is seriously powerful, but it can still get shot down just the same as anything else. And it really needs a Loach spotting in order for it to find targets. So it's good for people to actually work together with their helicopters as a team.
Once the VC realized that running across the open field may not be the best option for moving around between point A and B and start sneaking through the side route of the jungle, you really are going to need like call outs from the team, both audio and from the Loach, for that helicopter to be effective. It's super powerful, but if it's firing blindly into the jungle and hitting nothing, it's accomplishing nothing.
Staying under the tree cover is absolutely the way to survive against the helicopters. If you run across an open field, you last about 10 seconds if you're lucky. So, in terms of damage model, flight model, etc., because Red Orchestra is a realistic, authentic game, but it's not a simulator, the helicopters have been done the same way. They're realistic, they're not simulator level. Don't go in expecting this to be like DCS Huey. But also, they are more complex than battlefield helicopters, for instance. So they're harder to fly, they're easier to crash. We've put it somewhere in the middle. Some of the testers did have some issues initially, so we've split it into two different versions, two flight models. There's the simplified one, there's the advanced. Now, there's only a few differences. The simplified one is a little more likely to get in battlefield. Your up and down keys, you hold to go up, you let go, it goes back to being in a hover. It also has some of the more realistic effects don't actually get calculated while you're in simplified mode, mostly because people are having trouble landing. If you check the box for advanced, this is how I always fly. We're simulating a few extra things. We've got ground effect, we've got translational lift. Anybody who knows anything about helicopters knows these other ways to get extra lifts so that you can get airborne if you've got damage. We haven't gone, as I said, full sim. You won't get vortex ring state. You won't get rotor overspeed. You can't do a dodgy thing and rip the rotor off. Although, there is a nut on the top of the rotor blade called the Jesus nut. It's a real thing. You take a 50 cal round to that, your rotor flies off. Good luck surviving that. But the flight model does allow you to do a few things when you take damage. So the damage model, we're checking damage on your rotor blades. You can smash your rotors into something and you smash them off, you'll fall to the ground. You can break your tail rotor or have it shot off and you'll start to spin. You can snap the tail boom off if you're a very bad pilot and then you're in real trouble. You can have your engine shot up. People do generally ask with helicopter things, can you do an auto rotation? Yes, you can. If your engine gets destroyed, you can safely land it. Your rotor does not magically stop. You can land it and get everybody out in one piece, and the pilot can jump out and keep fighting on the ground. A lot of incentive to not just crash and use your helicopter as a portable missile. If you've got guys in the back, you'll get all those team kills. So you really want to try and land it and do the right thing. And you saw in the trailer, the glass was getting shot up. You can break the canopy, you can break bits and pieces. If you hit too hard on the skids, you'll break them off, and then it's a bit hard to land.
The pilot's pretty squishy and kind of important for continued flight.
Definitely. The pilots generally to be the number one reason that they crash is that the pilot takes a few bullets and it's all over.
Yeah, that's one of the things we actually saw people asking, like on Reddit and on forums, speculating that the helicopters would be totally overpowered for the Americans, but honestly, we aren't seeing that in play tests. I mean, the Vietnamese have the RPG-7, the SAM missiles, Dishka, and the helicopters are completely vulnerable to small arms fire.
Yeah, the Dushka is the DSHK, the Russian 50 cal equivalent, just for clarification.
Yeah, so yeah, it shoots giant, it's actually like 51 caliber or something. Massive, giant rounds that just punch holes through the helicopters like paper.
Yeah, and even if the helicopters aren't vulnerable, the pilots certainly
They
are.
absolutely are, yeah. When the helicopters fly over, there's a lot of gunfire coming from the ground, so they need to keep a lot of speed up. If they slow down, they're dead. We've got a tester who is almost banned from using the RPG because he RPG snipes helicopters out of the air with that thing, which is just crazy and very upsetting if you're the pilot. So we do encourage you to keep flying, fly fast, don't slow down unless you're actually landing, and this is where you want the Loach to scout out the landing zone before the Huey comes in, because if you land there and there's somebody waiting, well, you look like an idiot. But
You look like mincemeat.
exactly. But on the other side, the Vietnamese do have a sort of passive camouflage ability. They don't disappear, but they can disappear from radar, so they can hide from being scouted. So if they're prone or crouching for a few seconds and they don't shoot, they will not show up on that scouting radar. So you can still lay ambushes for landing helicopters quite well, and it's a very big surprise for the troops who jump out of them.
Okay, I think we're about, we've got about 15 minutes to go. Time for some Q&A. Do we have, do we pick up some from Reddit and the forums as well?
Yeah,
I think we did, so.
Okay.
So I think we've answered this question. I hope we've answered this question. If anybody's not sure.
Well, the reason why I put this in there was because, some people were wondering if the helicopters were on rails in any way, or if they can go outside of the playable area at all. And the answer is yes, they can. It's all free roaming. Like you take off, you can land it, you can crash land somewhere. There's no limitations really to where you can go.
Yeah. Trees hurt.
Bullets
mountains
hurt.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah.
What changes are we making to the game to accommodate all the automatic weapons as opposed to?
A couple of things. One is we try to push the engagement ranges out a little bit more. It's a lot harder to use automatic weapon when the guy's a lot further away. Recoil matters a lot more. We've also mentioned some of our sort of the news updates in the past that we have been making changes to the weapon handling, to recoil. The sights do not stay perfectly aligned when you start firing, so it's a lot harder to take somebody out with fully automatic unless they're up close. And if they're up close, well, that's his problem. Suppression's a little bit more effective now as well. You do find if somebody starts firing first, but they miss, the other guy does have a lot harder time shooting back. Not impossible, but it's effective.
Made any changes to the UI or the HUD since RO2?
There might have been some small changes to the HUD. We have done a pretty significant changing of the HUD. Some of this stuff is still there, unchanged. We have shrunk things a lot. We've gotten rid of a lot of stuff that we figured was just clutter and unnecessary. When you iron sight now, we fade out a lot of those tactical view icons that used to clutter up the screen and make it hard to see what you're shooting at. So basically a lot of quality of life improvements to try and make it easier. We still need to get that information across to you, it's important, but not at the cost of getting you killed all the time.
Tutorial.
There will be some tutorial videos. Not sure about tutorial maps at this stage. There's highly likely to be a practice map for helicopters, though, so that you can actually get used to flying instead of jumping into a live server and then having everybody hate you and vote to kick you because you just crashed into the ground with your commander on board.
The game's a lot more accessible in the sense that you're being told what to do a lot, but the information's being delivered to the player a lot better. In RO and RO2, you pretty much had to have a manual or a guide to figure out how to do a lot of stuff. And so now the game's going to tell you through tips and more intuitive ways, basically, to like what you're supposed to be doing, how different functions work. Like for instance, the machine gun, the barrel can overheat and stuff like that. So it gives you a lot of tips on like how to control stuff like that.
So I know we've been doing some recording of audio, but mostly the weapons so far. We haven't managed to get to any of the localized languages, so I believe some of you may have picked up on the Japanese in the trailer that was running. But will the Vietnamese factions use the native languages?
Yes, they will.
Yeah.
Yep.
Is that simple enough?
Do we have system requirements yet?
I'll answer this one. I mean, the general answer to this is we're shooting for mid-tier hardware. Like we're still using Unreal 3, so it's not a huge technical leap. But if your system can run RO2, there's no reason why it couldn't run Vietnam.
It's definitely a little bit harder on systems than RO2 was, but we have been pushing the limits of the engine.
Yeah,
we've definitely improved the graphical fidelity a lot.
A lot of vegetation, bigger maps, longer lines of sight.
Yeah,
like that.
so it does hit your PC a little harder than the previous titles, but it shouldn't cause too much drama for the majority of people's computers that are out there at the moment.
It's going to be 3 or 4 years on since we released Rising Storm.
Exactly.
So Heroes of the West added the unique role of the Radio Man. Are we planning to have any unique characters or roles that they haven't seen before?
Haven't been seen before. Some roles are definitely one side or the other. RPG guy is definitely a Vietnamese thing. There's no rocket launcher on the other side. Grenadier is definitely only on the American side. There's no grenade launchers on the other side. Flamethrower guy. Anyway, we've given that to the engineer this time, but it's still only American. In terms of Radio Man, that's a bit up in the air.
I mean, there's the scout and point man, given more tools basically to actually act as a scout or a point man.
Yeah, we're definitely trying to make sure that the classes function as different classes rather than a guy with a different name but mostly the same guns as everybody else. We want them to have a purpose this time.
Yep.
Yeah. Before we jump on to the next question in here, if anyone's got questions in the room, jump to one of the microphones. We'll start taking those questions. And just to encourage some questions in the room, because I don't intend to carry this thing back home with me, most interesting question wins a helmet. We'll decide which one.
All right, do we have a date yet for the start of the closed beta?
Pardon?
Do we have a date yet for the start of the closed beta?
We haven't set a date to it. We're aiming for fairly soon. The game's in good shape at the moment. We're trying to get up to a content complete point over the next few weeks. So we'd hope to start just stepping it up. We're stepping it up a little bit at the moment, but that's really just so we can get to the point where we can regularly fill a server for QA, a full 64-player server every time we run a test. Over the next few weeks, we'll be just steadily increasing that. So be on the lookout for emails in the next few weeks.